What's popping, y'all? Today we're going to try a little bit of something new. I kind of want to create this new or test this new thing today called YAP sessions, where I just like talk about some nonsense or some topic that isn't necessarily relevant, but is at the forefront of my mind. And I want to get feedback and opinions from how you guys think about this as well. And this is like the title says, I don't like music anymore as much as I once did. And for instance, I still listen to it. I think I listen to music far less than, I guess, the average music listener. I don't think there's more than 30 minutes maximum a day where I'll be listening to music. And that's if I'm intentionally listening to it. There are days I go without listening to any type of music. And partially is because I guess like I just have other interests that I've developed over time. But there's also that lack of excitement in me that I once had. Like when I was younger, I would be on forums. I'd be waiting for leaks of albums, not like leaked songs, because I always talked about stuff like that. But like, for example, Rodeo or like Earl Sweatshirt Doors. Like before those albums leaked, I was like waiting on the leak on these different forums. Then it finally drops. I'm like, damn, I get to listen to this. And then listening to it multiple times and waiting for other artists to drop. And I think a lot has changed in the game, even from when we were younger, when we went and bought CDs for some of us. And I kind of want to go through my listening history for the past couple of days or even week just to see what I'm listening to. And I look at it and none of it is really new. Like for instance, the other day, I was listening to Young Dolph, right? I was listening to Young Dolph's posthumous album. I think it was his second posthumous album, and the reason why I even ended up listening to that, I never listened to it before. Young Dolph, just for some kind of background info, I found Young Dolph, maybe it was right before, I think it was from Preach. I found him like when he was just blowing up. And then I listened to High Class Street Music 5. That's my favorite mixtape by Dolph by far. 100 Shots, I didn't really like too much. I felt like High Class Street Music 5 was peak Dolph for me. But a friend was telling me like, yo, you gotta tap in with Key Glock more. I listened to a couple of Key Glock songs. I never listened to a Key Glock album. And I had never checked out the Young Dolph and Key Glock albums. I don't know why. It just felt like one of those times where an artist is putting someone on, like for example, Lil Durk and Mimo 600, for instance. Like if Lil Durk has an album with Mimo 600, I'm not listening to it. It feels like, yeah, this is probably not gonna be good. Kind of like the Young Boy compilation albums. But here I was in a situation with a new friend that I made, and he's telling me about a lot of like Bay Area hip hop because he's a little bit of an older dude. He's like, yo, this was the stuff I was listening to in Bay Area. We start having these conversations. He starts playing it on the TV and stuff. I'm like, damn, some of this stuff is kind of dope. Like he's playing me like Dre Dog, who would become like Andre Nicotina. So it was really dope to see like this style of music that when I was growing up, we were literally only listening to music from where we were from, not really Bay Area music. So then we get to start talking about Young Dolph, and he's like, nah, dude, you have to check out Dumb and Dumber, and you have to check out Young Dolph's most last posthumous project. So I checked both of them out. I like Dumb and Dumber. I like the album. So that's two albums that I listened to that are old, technically, nothing new. And how did I get put onto them? I was having a conversation with someone whose opinion I was willing to take because we had such a good conversation. Like he knew such large amount of wealth of knowledge on hip hop from before I was even really born because he was listening to it back then. And if we look at a couple of other songs, I was listening to some Juice WRLD, the Light, that song. I was listening to Start It Up with Lloyd Banks and Kanye West, ironically. Well, not ironically, but that's like an odd thing to listen to. And the reason why I even listened to this song is because I was looking for the song Any Girl, Lloyd featuring Lloyd Banks. It had like the black and yellow album cover. So I eventually found that song, but that was by accident. That I ended up listening to the other Lloyd Banks song. I listened to some Lil Tecca. I always throw him on here and there. And then I was listening to some pop music. I don't even know why. Listening to Dark Horse. I was listening to Come and Get It by Selena Gomez. This was kind of autoplay, so we can skip through this since I would probably just look for one song and then the others would start autoplaying. Lana Del Rey, I mess with her heavy though. I've been listening to her stuff since like 2013 or something like that. She's fire. And then I went down this rabbit hole of like Japanese production. Like I was listening to Lovesick by Shing 02, this song Yin and Yang. So just like some production stuff that I went down. I started listening to, if we look at albums this year, I've just repeated albums. So I listened to the BLP Kosher album a ton. I like the Travis Scott album. I think a lot of people, they didn't really like it too much, but I mess with it. The Kid Laroi album, I listened to that a bunch. I really like this album. He came back with something to say and he delivered. Let's see what else. Other than that, there isn't much that I've listened to. New stuff. If we go by albums that I've saved, I saved Pink Friday 2. I haven't finished that yet. I was on a flight. I listened to maybe like 3/4 of it. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. But is it something that I'm going to be continuously listening to? I don't think so. I had a bunch of Lana Del Rey albums. This is also a habit I have, and I've had it since I was younger. And this is why if someone asks me to name 5 songs by anybody, I'd probably struggle because the listening habit that I developed after I would say like maybe I was like 14 years old. Before that, you just listen to singles here and there. Maybe you listen to an album if you bought it. But what I would start doing is if I found an artist and they had a bunch of music in the past, I would just download every single album and mixtape and just listen to all of it. So if you tell me to name 5 songs, I might not be able to, but I can name you 5 albums or mixtapes. And that's what I did with Lana Del Rey. Again, I kind of just went through all the albums that I missed because I was listening to her for a long time, but the albums that she had, like Lust for Life, I think I listened to that one, yeah. I think I stopped with Ultraviolence. So Norman Rockwell, Honeymoon, Chemtrails Over the Country Club, I'd never listened to those albums. So when I went back and I'm kind of like revisiting my past, like, yo, I missed out on 3 albums. So I downloaded all those albums and I listened to them. There was also this Mariah the Scientist song that a friend of mine showed me, Spread Thin. It was a popular song, but I never listened to her. And I'll give you a reason why I never listened to her. She was just known as the girl that was signed or was affiliated with Tory Lanez. And I'm just like, I feel like she's being forced on me. I don't want to listen to her. And then she was known for dating Young Thug. I think she's with him still. And I'm thinking, okay, the last girl to date Young Thug was like Jerica Carley or something like that. That I'm pretty sure that's her name, unless I'm forgetting some middle name or something like that. And then Young Thug tried to make her do music or help her with music, and I didn't like it at all. So I just attributed that poor experience to this girl, Mariah the Scientist. So I was like, I'm not really going to check out her stuff. It's probably mid at best. But that Spread Thin song was really, really good. A friend of mine was playing it, and I heard it. So that's another situation where it's like, hey, it didn't feel like the music was forced upon me. So I downloaded her albums. So I've been listening to her stuff. I don't know if it's Rai Rai World. That's the album title. I listened to Trippie Redd St. Michael. That was a good album. Mixtape, EP, whatever you want to call it. Trippie Redd's kind of been on the up and up again, music quality wise. He's gotten to a point where I think he's comfortable in what he's accomplished and isn't trying to chase the new trend or trying to chase hits, and he's just trying to put out good stuff. And I don't think he cares about sales as much as he once did. Plus, he isn't at the point where he's super, super mainstream, where people are going to be talking about his sales and all that. And he's at the point where he's above most of these other guys, or they have respect for him that came up after him. So he's in a unique position. The Doja Cat Scarlet album, I listened to that. I enjoyed that. Now we're getting old, like Lil Tecca Tech. That was like the last album I listened to. Obviously, I listened to Drake, but that's something that is just normal. It's kind of part of the job, right? You just want to check out what he's doing. But a recurring theme that you guys, for instance, can probably catch on to at this point, and which is where I want to get some feedback, and I want you guys to share your opinions in the comments too, is when I feel like music is being forced on me, and this is something I tell pretty much every artist that I've talked to on a personal level, when you're marketing music, it has to feel like the individual, the fan, the listener discovered it on their own. If they felt like they were forced, duped, goaded, tricked, bamboozled into listening to something, they're going to develop an animosity towards it, even if it's good. Like, it has to be mind-blowingly, like earth-shatteringly good for them to be duped or feel like they were forced into listening to something and for them to like it, because they're already coming into it with a negative presupposition or whatever the hell the word is. We're going to keep that in there. Or a negative preconceived notion, I guess you could say. However, if a friend is telling you about it, or if you feel like everyone else is listening to it and you're missing out on something, those are two things where you're like, yo, I don't want to be out of the club. Or if you discover it on your own or a friend shows it to you, you're looking at it like, damn, this is something that we found, or this is something that someone put me onto. Or if you're on your own, especially back in the day, you remember you run into some random song on SoundCloud, you're like, yo, this artist is fire. I can't tell anyone about this. There are a couple of guys like that. I think they haven't even blown up yet, or one of them hasn't blown up yet. I think it was After the Party was one of those guys for me. I just remembered his name. He had these songs on YouTube where it was just some girl and then like an audio track as the song cover. And he was dropping some great music. And he's an anonymous guy, faceless guy. I don't know if he's still making music. I remember I briefly talked to his manager because I wanted to get something done with him, like maybe like an interview or something like that. I don't know if that fell apart, but the guy was from New York, and that was an example of someone where I was just showing him to everybody, and everybody I showed him to was showing him to everybody. And he grew by this network effect without really any marketing, but we never felt like we were having him pushed onto us. So that's the problem I have with like a lot of mainstream music right now. Like if I pull up some freaking like Rap Life or some nonsense like that, it feels like it's being forced on me. And that's the reason why I don't listen to most of Yo Gotti's artists, or most of these artists that are on, let's say like QC that they're trying to put on. All of these artists, they're just like forcing it on me. And it sounds like everybody else on top of that. If it was something original that they were throwing on us, I'd be like, okay, let's check it out. But it's not. So we kind of lose that, how do you say, like that spark, you could say, when you discover something new. And I want to kind of know your guys' listening habits. Like, who are you listening to? Do you feel the same way where you're kind of bored? And then I think one of the most enjoyable things is when you discover a scene. Like you find this one artist and then you see him featured with somebody else, maybe on like 2 features. And you're like, oh, I heard this guy. He was pretty good on this feature. Let me check out what his music is sounding like. And then you find him, and then you find someone else, and then you see that third person, or like let's say person A, person B, person C. Rapper B or artist B was featured on 2 of artist A's songs. And you're like, okay, this guy's pretty good. Let me check out artist B. You see artist B, listen to a couple of his songs. There's artist C that's on artist B's song. And you're like, oh, this guy's pretty good. And then when you go to artist C, you find that artist C has features on his songs from artist A. And then you've discovered this little collective, even though it may be an unofficial collective. And it feels like you unearthed the first piece of gold. And now you're digging in lower and lower until you found like a gold mine. And this was how I initially found Space Ghost Perp, as well as Raider Clan. I think this is how this is how I found Not Future. You first find Tyler the Creator probably, and then you find Earl, and then you find Haji, and then you find all of these other people where you're like, whoa, I can't believe this continues to get better and better. Maybe you might like the first person that you found the most, but you find this just group that's all making their own music, and they're making music together. And it gives you like this lively feeling. But I don't get that anymore. And I don't know if that's because the marketing's gotten a lot better, or a lot more effective. I wouldn't say better, because like I go back to it, if you don't feel like you're discovering the music, it's not good. And I think that's the thing with Ice Spice too. A lot of people felt like they found Ice Spice, and then she like blew up their memes. Of course, like appearance helped Ice Spice a lot, but we've had this conversation back in my Ruby Rose video where I talk about like, hey, Ruby Rose is, respectfully, like she's very good looking. Like appearance wise, you're not going to say she's less attractive, right, than Ice Spice. Some will say more, I don't know. But she had all the advantages appearance wise that Ice Spice had, yet Ruby Rose's music career has gone largely nowhere other than a XXL freshman list, which most of us have no idea how she even got on there. It might have been connections or something. She's transferred between labels a couple of times. We don't even know. Well, actually, let's be honest. We know music isn't her main focus, and it's 100% not her main revenue generator. If it was, maybe she would. I think she had a song with Future where she said she paid for a feature. So she was trying to trying to grease the wheels and get them moving in a respectful manner, like the wheels turning in the factory, not any other type of wheels. I don't want to put that on her name. That would be wrong. I can talk trash about her music, but I don't know her personally, so I'm not going to throw that on her name. And then when you think about it, you've got other artists, like for example, like Nas. I like what Nas has been doing. And there are so many factions now that it takes so much time to effectively discover music, listen to music, and see if you enjoy it or not. So there's an opportunity cost that I've been thinking about all the time whenever there's a new album. And even if it's an album by an artist that I know I have liked in the past. So if I'm lukewarm about them, I'm like, well, this artist just dropped an album. First thing I do, scroll to the bottom, 50 minutes. I'm like, okay, 50 minutes. Can I be doing something else with this 50 minutes of time that I have that would be more productive, that I would be losing out if I listen to this? And a lot of the times the answer is yes, unless it's like a Nicki Minaj or like a big moment where I could probably talk about it. And also I feel like they've done me such a solid in the past of dropping such great music that's been the soundtrack to different parts of my life, that it's only in good faith and like reciprocity that I return the favor by at the very least, listening to their album after all they've dropped and, contributing to their stream. Sometimes buying something if I really, really, really like that artist. And I don't know if that's an age thing, because I'm a little bit older now, like I'm not 18, 19 anymore. And I think as you get slightly older, maybe like you finish college or something like that, you start to recognize like, hey, I don't have infinite time. Like when you're 16, 17, 18, you're just listening to music all the time. Maybe you're playing video games all the time, and you feel like time is like infinite to a degree. Like, hey, I'm still just in school. Whereas now you're thinking, okay, there's trade-offs. Time I'm spending on listening to certain music or actively looking for music is time I'm not spending. Maybe some of y'all have kids, or time you're not spending with your parents, time you're not spending with brothers, sisters, time you're not spending maybe looking for opportunities to get into a better situation financially in your life, or educate yourself on something else. Like for example, if people want to explore languages and stuff like that, hey, an hour of practice a day. I have a friend. He was actually, funny enough, I might have him on and have a conversation with him. He's a pretty cool guy, energetic guy. He used to be a producer when he was like a teenager, sold a couple of beats. He had a pretty big placement. I think it's a big placement, like a cultural placement. And then he had a company where he was like producing music for like commercials, TV and stuff like that. And that was really successful before he was even like 23 years old. And he was telling me when 2020, 2021 was going on, he was kind of like very scared in the beginning. So he moved into an isolated place and he gained a ton of weight, but he also lost the weight, which was very impressive. But he was telling me that he really wanted to learn Japanese. So he just went on this site, I think it's italki, and he just did, I think, an hour maybe a day, every single day for nearly 2 years, maybe a a year and a half to 2 years just speaking Japanese. He had no prior Japanese experience. He's really, really into food and he liked the culture. So he would just practice with some like Japanese girl or guy that he would talk to every single day for an hour, and he would get speech practice. And the dude's like fluent. And this is crazy because we were hanging out. I think we were in New York or something, and he was going in, and then I didn't know this. So he just randomly, he's like, "Oh, you're Japanese?" He just starts pulling out the Japanese, speaking Japanese. I'm like, "Yo, what the hell?" And then, "Yo, you're not Japanese?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm pretty decent at it. I can speak, I can get around." And then he ended up going on a trip to Japan earlier this year for like 5 weeks. And he had the ability to communicate with people the entire time. Like, obviously, he's not super, super fluent, but he's fluent enough to where he can understand everyone and they can all understand him. And that's a difficult language. It's not like a Spanish or a French, especially if you're primarily an English speaker. Learning those is significant, even a Portuguese. Learning those is significantly easier than learning Japanese. And I mean, he can't read it or write it, but that's not the point. So a year and a half, less than 2 years, he was able to develop that off just an hour a day. So you got to think about it like, yo, this hour that I'm spending, what else could I be committing it to? And for some, they could be committing it to making their own music. That's another thing too, where a lot of artists, I think, that have developed a certain sound, they've gotten inspiration initially from listening to other people, but then they kind of lock themselves in and just focus on their own sound. And that's something that I believe Playboi Carti does. That's something a couple of artists I know do. That's something Lil Wayne did for a very long time. He still does it. Him and he was locked in with Mac Main. So that's an example of somebody that's kind of closing themselves off. Now, we're not the same since there's a decent amount of you guys here, probably like 25, 30% that actually make music. But the rest of us, probably the previous example will ring true and kind of like resonate with you a little bit more. So for me, I think it's a combination of factors from the barrier to entry to find new music authentically that you enjoy takes a lot of time. Like you have to do a lot of digging. Probably TikTok would be the best. And you would just have to sift through so much people that are making music. And then you eventually maybe find an untapped gem. You're like, whoa, this is great. And then you check out that person's music. But who's trying to do all that when we're being bombarded by advertisements and cloaked advertisements on our feeds and on every platform that show us the next mainstream artist that they're putting money behind. And they're putting money behind artists earlier and earlier and earlier. So I also feel like what kind of got me tired of music is they've been signing artists so early that this authentic independent scene that existed in the 2010s and even up until like 2017 is pretty much largely over now. You got to find artists with like 250 followers if you want to find somebody that's not unsigned or got an offer or isn't followed by some A&R, which I guess is good opportunity-wise for all of these artists that these A&Rs and labels are trying to sign people earlier, although it's more quote-unquote predatory if you want to call it that in a business move because, hey, the earlier you can get them, the less you can get them for. But I want to know your guys' thoughts on this. Do you still have that zest for music? Pause. I go, do you still have that love for it where you're always looking for stuff? And how are you finding stuff if you're finding people that are unsigned, untapped? How are you going about it? Are you just like scrolling through TikTok or something? Which is also maybe a reason why I haven't found anybody new. I don't use TikTok. I've never scrolled through TikTok ever in life other than to like do market research or something like that or notice patterns. But for my actual consumption, I've never done it. So let me know how you're doing that if you are. If you don't find music the same anymore, tell me your age and why and when it started happening. I'm pretty much going to read through every single comment on this. And if you like this video, let me know in the comments too if you want me to do more stuff like this. I thought like a YAP session was funny because me and my friends were always whenever we talk to each other, I'm like, yo, I'm tired of you yapping. Like he'll just talk for a minute and it'll be something relevant, but we'll just like clown each other like that. So I thought it would be a funny name too. And, weaponize the word that usually, especially for like broadcasters or people that I see that are streamers, they see someone say they're yapping in the chat and they like lose it or they get frustrated or they like try to change the topic to entertain the person. So I'm like, hey, let's just take that one word and already say we're doing it. So hey, if you throw it back, it doesn't even count at that point. But yeah, let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Peace.